Our next guest is the co-host of the Daily Face-Off podcast, and we know them. He's a longtime sports talk radio host in Edmonton, currently with Sports 1440. It's our pleasure to welcome Jason Gregor to the program. How you doing?
Matty, living the dream, buddy. Just sitting here in the practice facility, waiting patiently for this never delayed series to finally begin. So it should be good.
Yeah, we got a lot of build up here. Well, first of all, talk to us about practice. Kane practicing, Henrique not? Is that
news? Kane's on the ice. That's not a surprise. You know what? He's been dealing with something nagging, but he'll play. Yesterday, Knobloch said he was hoping Henrique would skate, but the fact that he hasn't skated, like he got injured late in Game 5. To me now, obviously it's playoffs. You know what? The caramel secret's easier to find than an injury update.
Good reference. Wow.
But when I saw Henrique, to me, it looked like, like an ankle injury or a knee. But again, that's speculation on my part. I don't know 100%. But, usually if it's an upper body, a guy can skate a little bit, right? The fact that he hasn't skated suggests to me it's something lower body with him. And you know what? He's a really good complementary player, right? He's another 20-goal scorer. He's come in. He's played very well for Edmonton. I think he was exactly what they wanted. A guy who's good offensively, but incredibly reliable defensively. And that's the difference for the Oilers now. They're not the team that can throw a grenade in their own zone and just explode like they beat themselves in the past. They become much more responsible. So, Janmark's skating on that line. He has been for the last 4 days. And, he's basically a less offensively skilled Adam Henrique, right? Mm-hmm. He's super smart. He's reliable. He's a good penalty killer. So I'm not surprised if he ends up taking his spot for a game because McDavid doesn't really need a lot of help. Him and Hyman know how to score, right? They want to have guys out there that can be reliable defensively.
And Edmonton with such enviable depth at center that Henrique had been playing on a wing, and even Nugent Hopkins doesn't have to center a line because of all the guys they can play the middle. You're expecting McLeod, Holloway, and Perry as the third line, Jason, and is that the line we think is going to see a lot of the Elias Pettersson line?
Yeah, you know what? See, a lot of people, when they like Dylan Holloway, they're like, he's kind of the shiny new toy. He's a young player, he's really fast. And, some people think he would play there, but this is the playoff, guys. And I don't know if Holloway's there ready just yet, right? Like he did score 2 goals in Game 2, but in the 4 wins, you know what? He was just kind of like another guy. And that's not a knock on him at all. He's a young player who I think has got a real high ceiling moving forward, but you're entering the second round of the playoffs. You guys know how coaches work. Coaches, and I don't care what sport you're in, when the coach looks at the lineup and is like, I know exactly what I get from this guy, I'm going to play him. So I think you'll see Holloway get a few shifts there, guys. Specifically, what happens in Chris Knobloch, since he's come in, he really utilizes his entire bench. So on his penalty kill, he'll have 3 units of penalty killers, right? He goes A, B, C, 6 guys. Then he comes out of the power play, the opposing team's power play, and he runs McDavid, Hyman, and Draisaitl. Then he runs his next 3 forwards, Evander Kane, the other guys, this case Fogle, guys who don't penalty kill, right? And that's what he does. So I think you might see Holloway, because Janmark's one of the 6 penalty killers, although it's Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, you'll probably see Holloway maybe get an odd shift there. Knobloch is not a coach who just goes line A, B, C, D, and I just stick with them all game. So I think you'll see Holloway get a few shifts there, guys, but I'd be surprised if he's the guy who's going to move up there, at least to start the series. Knobloch is not afraid to mix it up.
But to the second part of the question, McLeod versus Pettersson, do you see that being the matchup down the middle?
Well, I think in Vancouver for sure, right? Like I think Vancouver wants Miller and Lindholm against McDavid and Draisaitl, right? Based on how Pettersson played in the first round. Plus, I don't think Edmonton's going to shy away from that matchup. McLeod's speed. McLeod is a guy who he doesn't bring you a ton of offense, but he's pretty reliable defensively. And his speed is a real asset, right? And so when I look at Vancouver's lines, because, now we've seen Lindholm, obviously it was a different team, but Draisaitl kind of ate his lunch a few years ago against Calgary. So, we'll see. But I would think Vancouver anyway, and talking to guys in Edmonton, I think Edmonton's expecting Miller Lindholm to start McDavid Draisaitl, which in theory, if you're Vancouver, hey, Elias Pettersson, if we're going to win the series, he's got to produce, right? Like, I don't think Vancouver has a hope to win this series if Elias Pettersson is as unproductive as he was in the first round. Or really, as Matt said yesterday on my show, if he could just hit a few empty nets, all of a sudden he probably doesn't look that unproductive.
In terms of the juggling throughout the game, McDavid and Draisaitl together at times still at 5-on-5, or does he save that just for the power play?
No, if you look in the first series, McDavid played 79 minutes 5-on-5. Him and Draisaitl played 8 minutes together. They don't play together, but they really play together, guys. The first shift after the opposing team has a power play.
And
that's it.
Yeah.
Other than that, they run their guns. You know what? Draisaitl's an elite player. Draisaitl was the Oilers MVP in my eyes in the first series. He was unbelievable offensively, scores goals. You know what? You look at their defensive zone starts between Draisaitl and McDavid. It's massively favored Draisaitl. He takes the key draws, right? Like he to me is the unicorn of the superstars in the NHL. Look at Nathan McKinnon. He's an unreal player. He's terrible in faceoffs. He's 45%. Draisaitl, he went up against Kopitar. So those two guys were top 4 in faceoff percentage in the first round. They went head-to-head, 47 draws. So against everybody else, both of them dominated, right? Because it was Draisaitl won 24 of 47. But no, he's on his own line. Him, Kane, and Nugent Hopkins are a line. You know what? It's a big line with Draisaitl and Kane. It's a fast line, and it's obviously a gifted offensive line. So don't expect a lot of McDavid, Draisaitl together. Now, they didn't trail LA a ton, guys, so maybe that might play into it. But even in game 2, when they were trailing for a bit, he's still stuck with those guys separate.
Canucks won a game with just 12 shots. Oilers needed 13 to win a game. But he's had a template to how to beat the Oilers. What happened in that game that kept the Oilers with this high-octane offense? How did the Oilers only get 13 shots? Is there something for the Canucks to exploit there? Or is there extenuating circumstances, do you think?
It's interesting about the Oilers. They are a high-octane offense, but since Chris Knoblauch came in, they're top 5 in goals against, right? Like, they finally figured out, guys, that to win in the playoffs, you have to be good defensively 5-on-5. Now, I think Edmonton scored the second most goals in the first round 5-on-5, but they also allowed 12 goals 5-on-5 to LA, right? When I look at them and what happened in Edmonton in that 1-0 game, LA had a ton of shots, but you guys, I watched your series and you guys watched it closer than I did. Sometimes, there's shots that they don't really mean anything, right? Yeah. Like it's outside. Mm-hmm. Edmonton allowed LA to stay on the perimeter. It was Sport Logic, I think, had the scoring chances 7-4 in favor of Edmonton, high danger, even though they only had 13 shots and LA had 33. So Edmonton
had some nights like that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they can play better defensively. Like I think, obviously Vancouver and the Oilers, kind of sucks with the schedule. They've only met once in the last 69 games of the season, right? And McDavid didn't play in that game. So I don't, the regular season to me, I haven't put much into it. I even look at Vancouver. You guys saw them, they were scoring at will, right? There was Matt Sekeres going one-on-one against Blake Price on the court, right? Matty was just dunking all day on him. And
why you got to do me like that? Are you kidding me?
You look at in those early games in the season, the Canucks were just lighting up the Oilers, right? In a weird way, the Canucks' domination over the Oilers early on is maybe why Edmonton's good, because that forced them to make the coaching change. And Knoblauch and Paul Coffey, Coffey has made such a difference to how they approach the game with his defensemen. He doesn't want Vinny Desharnais, your third pair D-man, is the defensive guy. Coffey's you make plays, you pass the puck, and you can do it. And he showed him video. So, you know what? I look at Edmonton, they are high octane guys, but this series, I know how Vancouver plays. I won't be surprised if we see some low scoring games, which personally I hate. I'm all offense, but I think we might see a few 1-0, 2-1 games.
It's funny. You're the second person to mention Paul Coffey and his effect on the defense and how they've been more defensive. And I just, my galaxy brain stuff for me. I can't put it together as I remember Coffey being such a great offensive defenseman as a player. Okay. So here's the big question, Gregor. Tell me, Oilers are overconfident and taking the Canucks lightly, right? You've seen tons of signs of that over the last 48 hours, right?
Can you repeat that? It's so loud in here. I didn't hear the last part.
The Oilers, they're totally overconfident and taking the Canucks very lightly, right? You've seen all signs of that.
Yeah, well, I've seen all the betting odds. I'm sure you guys have seen everybody. What was the ESPN? Lots of people are picking Edmonton to win, and I understand why they're picking. I don't think they're overconfident, but is the player ever going to tell you they shouldn't be overconfident? I'll say that, right? Like Vancouver, I think is going to present a much tougher test than LA did in a variety of reasons. Just on special teams, like the Oilers absolutely obliterated LA on special teams. And guys, I don't know how much of the series you watched close, but it was kind of embarrassing that LA was just so stubborn on their special teams and they didn't change anything, right? Like, so let's start with the difference in Vancouver's power play to LA's power play. So LA like to have it. They'd run Doughty on the top like you run Hughes, but it's a righty to a lefty. And so it takes Doughty longer times to go to that right side. Hughes is a lefty. You can go quickly or over to Pettersson for the one time, right? Or Hughes is willing to take what we call the Hughes sifter. He's very good at it. It's like Nick Lidstrom. He's on the blue line. He'll walk it. Boom. He doesn't bomb one like Bouchard, but he'll get it on net, and it creates chaos. LA just didn't do it. Drew Doughty refused to shoot the puck. Yeah. So I don't think Edmonton is going to be overconfident. I don't think they should, because I think, Vancouver's penalty kill is going to be much more aggressive. Like, LA didn't really pressure. It was stunning to me. Like, the coach came out and said, hey, one team executed on special teams and one didn't. I'm like, well, yeah, no shit. Your team didn't adjust. Like, they allowed the orders because Draisaitl wins. I think he won 18 to 26 faceoffs on the power play. And they would want it. And it's always on the left side, right? Because you get to pick where you want to draw. He wins it on his backhand over to McDavid to Bouchard, and they have set plays. And LA didn't pressure once. Just like, what are you doing? And so I do know, I talked to Glenn Galton. He's like, hey, the one thing I know, Vancouver's penalty killers are going to pressure us way more. We have to be ready for that.
The Venom's already started between the fan bases. How heated does it get out on the ice there? Do you think that this one looks like a Smythe Division showdown?
Well, you know what? It's funny that Edmonton, and I wrote about this the other day, Edmonton and Vancouver, like, there's really no, like, I know there's the online stuff, guys, but there's really no rivalry, like ever on ice. And I'm hoping, like, I look at Vancouver's team and I look at all their guys signed. Vancouver should be good in a competitive team for many years, right? Now, Edmonton's got at least 2 more years of McDavid. I still think he'll re-sign. Draisaitl, we'll see. But this should be the beginning of an actual rivalry, right? Like, you mentioned the Smythe, you go back and these two teams, like, there are some guys, I think that Zadorov is a guy that the other team's not going to like. Evander Kane can piss off anybody, right? Vancouver has some smaller guys who are kind of like gnats. And I say that in a complimentary way, right? Like, Höglander will run around and stick some guys. Desharnais is a huge man. He'll get in someone's face. So I think early on, like, this might be a feel-out process. And maybe it's just me who loves rivalries. I hope that as this series goes along, we get some actual, like, on-ice animosity, which it's never happened, guys. Like, I looked at—
They haven't faced each other.
I know, it's astonishing. Like, we saw it towards the end of the regular season. We looked it up and like, what? They've only played 2 playoff series? Like, we had to double and triple check.
It's crazy.
See, that's the case. But I mean, they've both been absolutely horrible at times when the other's been pretty good. And so here we are, finally, and I'm with you. I hope we see animus, and I hope we see a rivalry sprout out of all this.
Well, you look at it, there's only been 5 years where they both made the playoffs and were within 5 points of each other.
Yeah.
Right? And one of those was 2020. So, you know what? It was in the bubble. There's not the same atmosphere as the playoffs. And they never met in the playoffs in any of those years. So in 92, the last time they met, Vancouver was first in the division, and Edmonton was, but that's so long ago, like, it's irrelevant. Like, Edmonton fans, it's funny. They talk like they hate Vancouver. And, Bieksa and Kessler, those years with Burrows, like, those guys were great to just stir the pot. But the Oilers were terrible. So they beat them for fun. The Sedins would get on the power play and it'd be tic-tac goal. And Oilers fans would cry in their drinks because they had no competitive team. And then lately here, Edmonton's finally started to get better. And it's only until here the last few years that now the Canucks are good. So I hope it is good, guys, because for 2 cities that are this close, there really isn't like a rivalry. I think Vancouver-Calgary probably has a bigger one just because of those battles in the playoffs. For sure. I think 9 out of 10 Canucks fans would tell you, if not 10 out of 10, would tell you the Flames are a bigger rival
for sure
than the Oilers. But finally, it's here. all these years together in the same division and looking forward to the series. Jason, thanks for the time here today, buddy. Appreciate this.
Hey, boys, sorry it's so loud in here, but I appreciate coming on. Hey, continued success with the show. I love it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.